Morning, everybody. A very warm welcome to everyone joining us from around the world this morning for this very auspicious occasion. I would like to extend our gratitude first and foremost to the following people for making themselves available to join our celebration today. Tova Ben-Dov, Honorary President, World WITSO, Esther Moore, President, World WITSO, Anita Friedman, Chairman, World WITSO, Shelley Trope-Friedman, President, WITSO South Africa, and our sponsor for this event from the George Elkin Family Trust, Karen Marsden, Chairman of the SAZF Cape Council, Myra Osrin and Tamara Lazarus, Honorary Chairman, WITSO Cape Town, our guest speaker and WITSO Cape Town member, Gwen Robbins, Barbara Sandler, Honorary Life Vice Chairman, and our members from Highlands House, WITSO Cape Town, Honorary Officers, Executive, Branch Chairman, WITSO Cape Town patrons, life members, award recipients, and their families, WITSO members and friends. And last, but certainly not least, Miriam Lichterman, WITSO member for over 70 years and a Holocaust survivor who has never missed our event and is always front and center at our celebrations. 120 years today. Wow, what a milestone. Today, the 19th of August, 2021, marks the exact day on which B'nai Zion Association was founded in Cape Town in 1901. You would think that an organization established as many moons ago would have changed its course, but by being overhauled, chosen to veer from its mandate, or even have fizzled out, but not us, no way. B'nai Zion has been a formidable force, a group of unrelenting warrior women, the epitome of Israel advocacy, and the poster child for core Jewish values, Derech Eretz and Tikkun Olam. It is no surprise that today, 120 years later, BZA WITSO Cape Town stands stronger than ever, even in the face of adversity, from a struggling South African economy to a global pandemic. This is testimony to our sense of sisterhood and absolute dedication to Israeli society and its most vulnerable. To this end, we took the decision to couple our anniversary with the celebration of our long-standing members who have exceeded 40 years of dedicated service. The Rebecca Seif Awards are traditionally held annually, but given the tumult of 2022, the year that was, we felt it apt to pend the 2020 award ceremony until 2021 in the hope that the recipient should be afforded the deep gratitude, acknowledgement, and celebration that they so deserve. In fact, today is such an auspicious celebration of WITSO fortitude that we are honored to receive a message from World WITSO President Esther Moore and World WITSO Chairman Anita Friedman, as well as our very own WITSO South Africa President, Shelley Trope-Friedman.
Mazal Tov, B'nai Zion, WITSO. Mazal Tov, B'nai Zion, WITSO, on your 120th anniversary, and for owning the title of the longest-running Jewish communal organization in Cape Town. What an accomplishment! Throughout the years, the women of B'nai Zion have always risen to the challenges of the time and will continue to do so, following in the path taken some 120 years ago by a group of courageous and daring women. To the recipients of the Rebecca Seif Award, I salute you for your commitment, motivation, and for having worked tirelessly for over 40 years to advance the status of women in Israel and ensure a brighter future for all the citizens of Israel. I would like also to acknowledge the exceptional contribution of those members who have served the organization for more than 50 and even 60 years. Your dedication and service has been critical to the success of B'nai Zion. If you want to touch the past, touch a rock. If you want to touch the present, touch a flower. If you want to touch the future, touch a life. Thank you for being our partners in doing what matters, for helping us to touch the lives of those in Witzo's care, and by doing so, shape Israel's future. Shalom.
Dear Bnot Zion Witzo friends, I am deeply honored to convey my heartfelt Mazal Tov to you as you celebrate your 120th anniversary and as you bestow the prestigious Rebecca Sif Award upon your outstanding volunteers for their years of dedicated service to Witzo and Israel. This emotive event celebrates the forging of a new link in the strong chain of our Witzo legacy. From the early days of the Zionist movement in South Africa, Cape Town has been a center of Zionist activity. The founding mothers of Bnot Zion were a group of remarkable women, new immigrants, who transcended the difficulties of their daily lives and pledged themselves to work towards the goal of a Jewish national homeland in Eretz Israel. They were idealists with a passion for Tikkun Olam, the pursuit of social justice. You walk in their footsteps. By preserving the values of the past, you are shaping the future. It is thanks to your enthusiasm and dedication that the Zionist flame continues to burn brightly as you partner with us in doing what matters for Israel and its people. Congratulations to the award recipients and Yashar Koach. We thank you for your lifelong commitment to volunteerism and community service. You have demonstrated there is no sacrifice too big when it comes to giving, as long as it comes from the heart. Each one of you has made a unique contribution, tapping into your passions, strengths, and talents to make a profound difference in the world. You are truly an inspiration to us all. I take this opportunity to wish you all good and sweet new year. May you be blessed with happiness, joy, and good health. Shana Tova u'Metuka to you and your families.
Shelley, the floor is yours.
Good morning to you all. This is indeed a very auspicious and special occasion. Thank you to both Esther, our world president, and Anita for your inspiring words. I too would like to start by congratulating Bnot Witzo. I must tell you, it is your 120th anniversary, and it is a remarkable accomplishment and definitely worth celebrating. It's a great joy for me to see so many people online. Obviously, I'd love to see you all in person, but at least it is really a pleasure to see so many of you together with us today. As we gather, acknowledge and applaud our wonderful Witzo women who are receiving their Rebecca Sif Awards. To all of you ladies, I commend you and thank you from the bottom of my heart for your faithfulness, loyalty, and devotion to Witzo. Your years of service are an example and an inspiration to me and to all. It is most apt that we are holding this awards ceremony during South Africa's Women's Month, a time when we seek to extol and celebrate those women who shine brightly and from whom we have much to learn. Internationally, Women's Day celebrates the contributions women around the world have made to society, culturally, politically, and socioeconomically. It is also an opportunity to raise awareness of areas that have not yet reached a place of gender equality. In South Africa, this month pays tribute to the generations of women whose struggles in our beautiful country laid the foundations for the progress made in empowering women and attempting to achieve gender equality. You ladies have also been instrumental in laying the foundations of this organization, our organization, equipping women, protecting children, and giving hope to the hopeless. This in turn has led to the progression and success of the work in WITSO in Israel through the diligent efforts of our South African contingent, as stated so clearly by Esther, our world president, and Anita. Yes, you have contributed greatly, and you've made a positive and lasting impact through your service and your commitment. I celebrate you all today, and once again, offer my heartfelt congratulations. Mazal Tov to you all, and thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Anita, Esther, and Shelley, for your warm messages of acknowledgement and encouragement. Considering warrior women and female fortitude, our guest speaker, Gwen Robbins, is a shining example of what defines a WITSO women. Gwen is a member of the B'nai Zion. Gwen has been, a member of the B'nai Zion WITSO since 1973 and has often chaired the Hadar branch through the years. She works for the Jewish Board of Deputies and is a keen historian of local Jewish history, having researched, written, and ghostwritten many scholar articles. Her mother, Mary Schreier, was the longest serving woman on the B'nai Zion executive. Her great-grandfather started the first Zionist men's organization in Cape Town, B'nai Zion, which lasted for all of 6 months before closing through lack of interest, unfortunately, unlike the Women's B'nai Zion Association, which has gone from strength to strength for 120 years. I now hand over to you, Gwen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I would like to congratulate all the WITSO women who will be getting their Rebecca Seif Awards this year. WITSO was established in 1920 by Rebecca Seif and by Vera Weitzman and by Edith Eder. I've always thought it unfair that some people are recognized while the contribution of others equally involved are ignored. So I'm going to be talking about all 3 founders, as well as some arbitrary connections of WITSO with South Africa. My interest was aroused when I read a letter in a book of Anglo-Jewish letters from 1158 to 1927. This letter was dated 2nd of September 1896 and was sent by the popular novelist Israel Zangwill to his cousin Monty Eder. Dear Monty, have I told you that there lives amid the brutality of Johannesburg a couple of Jews? No, sorry, can you just go back? We don't have to do everything at once. Sorry. No, go right back to the beginning. We're not there yet. Okay, my father, thank you. That there lives amid the brutality of Johannesburg a couple of Jews whose acquaintance is worth making, a Mr. and Mrs. Wolf Meyer. She is a cousin of Amy Levy. I'm not friendly with the husband, else I would give you an introduction, but it shouldn't be difficult for you to know them, especially as they complain of a lack of intelligent society in Johannesburg. She is very charming, a poetess, suppressed in a mother of 2 infants. He has a watchmaking establishment or something of that sort, was once at Cambridge. And Israel Zangwill went on to write that father is, as you know, living in Jerusalem, and by the latest account seems to be praying happily there. This was the days of snail mail before social media. So although I searched lacking Facebook or LinkedIn, I could find no trace of this charming poetess or a watchmaker called Wolf Meyer in Johannesburg. Zangwill was a popular speaker and a member of the Chovevei Zion Society and of the Wanderers of Kilburn, a group of Jewish intellectuals that included Dr. Solomon Schechter, whose daughter Ruth was to marry Morris Alexander, the founder of the Cape Jewish Board of Deputies, and a keen Zionist. Tamar has recently returned from Israel, where she gave a Chanukia. Could you show the Chanukia, please? Belonging to Alexander to the Friends of Zion Museum in Jerusalem. A Christian Zionist supporter of Herzl had given it to Alexander at a 1907 Zionist conference. Once upon a time, there were three cousins, Israel Zangwill, can we have Monty Eder, and Joseph Cohen, all became prominent in Zionist affairs. Zangwill's dad was a smos. Joseph's dad was a pawnbroker, while Monty's dad was a shipping merchant. When Montague David Eder's father died in 1886, leaving him comfortably off, he stopped working and, a committed socialist, devoted himself to social issues, taking part in a massive workers' protest in Trafalgar Square, viciously stopped by the police, leaving Monty with a scar on his forehead. So he decided he could best help the poor by becoming a doctor and enrolled at the University of London, sharing digs with his cousin Israel. Later, psychoanalyst Ernest Jones wrote of Monty that he would sacrifice all he had, time, money, labor, and health, without a moment's reflection, not only for social, but also for personal causes that engaged his sympathy. By the time Monty qualified as a doctor, a personal cause engaged his sympathy. He had fallen in love with Florence Herring. Unfortunately, she was already married. Adultery and divorce were frowned upon in Victorian England, and their affair, described by the judge as shocking and repulsive, made news headlines for 5 days. It was also alleged that the adulterer had been involved with Mr. Herring and his wife in insurance fraud. The case against Monty wasn't proved, but the scandal would ruin the reputation of a young doctor. So Doctor and the new Mrs. Eder moved to Johannesburg, where no one would have heard of them, and he called himself by his middle name, David, instead. Zangwill used the information he gained from David to write the story Anglicization, set against the background of the South African War, as well as a political novel, Mantle of the Larger, which attacked the belief that cosmopolitan Jewry were behind the war. I don't know if you ever read it in your book club, but in the January 1901 Bookman list, it was the 4th most popular book out of 38. As for Johannesburg, it wasn't long because before the materialism of the city of gold had offended the socialist sensitivities of Monty, now David, and he moved to Colombia, where he had an uncle in the sugar business. They didn't like Colombia either, so returned to England, where he became a medical officer in a Cumberland mining village. He didn't like the poverty of the mining village either, so became a medical officer in Bolivia. There, he was suspected of being a spy for Anglo-American concession hunters. So they went back to London, where he became a school doctor. As for Israel, he had a visitor. Next slide, please. Zangwill wrote, "One day, a black-bearded stranger knocked on my study door, like one dropped from the skies, and said, 'I am Theodor Herzl. Help me to rebuild the Jewish state.' Like Monty, Israel championed liberal causes, from the women's movement to human rights, from the exploitation of workers in the Belgian Congo to the genocide of the Armenians. Here was a new cause, and he became an ardent Zionist, introduced Herzl to potential supporters, traveled around England lecturing on Zionism, and enrolled his cousins, David and Joseph, in his new cause, Zionism. Israel helped Herzl establish the World Zionist Organization in 1897. Joseph founded the English Zionist Federation in 1899, becoming its president, as did David later. In 1901, Herzl decided to approach Cecil John Rhodes for money and asked Joseph to invite Max Langeman to arrange a meeting with Rhodes. Langeman was a prominent Johannesburg pioneer and Jewish communal leader who'd been involved with the Oaklanders and the Jameson Raid. I guess that David had probably met him in Johannesburg. Anyway, Joseph decided that the English journalist W.T. Stead would be better. Herzl wrote a flattering letter to Rhodes. Israel translated it into English, and Joseph was to give it to Stead. But Rhodes died before that could happen. In March 1902, Herzl wrote in his diary, "Cecil John Rhodes is dead. I thought of him as a man who could have given us money. I wasn't successful in meeting him." In 1902, Joseph accompanied Herzl to Constantinople to meet the Sultan, and Israel joined Herzl in a pilgrimage of English Jews to Palestine. Israel attended the Sixth Zionist Conference in Basel in 1903, where Herzl disclosed to the horrified audience that he was thinking of moving the Jewish state to Uganda. On his return, Zangwill reported back to the English Zionist Federation that he'd met South African Jews and received mandates from Jews from Cape Town, and that although South African millionaires were comfortable enough, it was a South African Zionist millionaire who had provided funds for a Hebrew encyclopedia. The names of the South African millionaire and the Cape Town Jews were not disclosed. That year, Zangwill married a suffragette, Edith Ayrton. Can we have a picture? Like Florence, she wasn't Jewish, but had a Jewish stepmother and was a writer and feminist. They joined the Women's Social and Political Union, criticized for supporting the militant tactics of its unwomanly members. Zangwill responded that ladylike means are all very well if you are dealing with gentlemen, but you are dealing with politicians. They helped form the Jewish League for Women's Suffrage to demand parliamentary franchise for women. The members disrupted Shabbos services, demanding religious and political suffrage for women, and had to be forcibly removed. The Anglo-Jewish press called them blackguards in bonnets. Zangwill thought Uganda a good idea and founded the Jewish Territorial Organization with a branch in Cape Town, and spent the next 7 years searching for a territory to serve as a Jewish homeland, looking in Argentina, Australia, Canada, Iowa, Mesopotamia, Nevada, Paraguay, Rhodesia, South Africa, Tripoli, and Uganda. He sent David to Brazil to scout out a suitable territory, and to West Africa the following year. I don't know if Lawrence went with. An American newspaper reported on the 2nd December 1904 under the heading, Israel Zangwill, who favors colonizing South Africa, that he was much interested in the project to colonize the Jews on a tract of land in South Africa donated by Great Britain. Israel was meant to be the keynote speaker at the 1905 South African Zionist Conference, but had to cancel. Perhaps there would have been a Jewish as well as an Afrikaans homeland here. I hope it would have been in the Western Cape rather than in the dry Karoo, although we might have made the desert bloom before the EFF got involved. Back in England, David fell in love with another married woman, this time a Jewish one. Edith was a teacher, married to drama critic Dr. Leslie Guest, and was the new woman personified. She was a vegetarian who walked around in flat heels and a jibba, a long coat worn by Egyptian men. Smitten, David abandoned Florence and ran off with Edith. As for Florence, having gone through the humiliating divorce and been schlepped back and forth to Africa, South America, and England, this was the last straw. Poor Florence committed suicide. After Edith's divorce, they married in 1909 and went to Vienna, where Edith studied psychology. David met Freud and was psychoanalyzed, and he returned to London as a psychiatrist. Edith Eder, Rebecca Seif, and Vera Weitzman were all active in England's suffragette movement. Rebecca, daughter of Marx and Spencer, was married to Israel Seif and was already a member of a Zionist women's group called B'nai Zion, but B'nai Zion was first. Married to prominent Zionist leaders, these women wanted a greater voice for women in the growing Zionist movement. Rebecca organized all-men fundraising dinners for her husband, a close friend of Chaim Weitzman, who'd worked with the British Palestine Committee, which prepared the ground for the Balfour Declaration. As a woman, Rebecca wasn't allowed to listen to the after-dinner speakers, so she dressed up as a waiter. Then came the First World War. David joined up, was posted to Malta, where he wrote the first book on what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. Can we see the book, please? Rebecca collected money for the charity fund for Polish Jewry and was a founder of the Rehabilitation and Preparation Fund, a precursor of Keren Hayesod, which was founded in London in 1920. Weitzman was appointed scientific advisor in chemistry to the British Admiralty, and the British decided that the Balfour Declaration would be just the thing to get the Jews on their side, as the Ottoman Empire had sided with Germany. Weitzman wrote that after the Balfour Declaration, Zangwill's territorial organization had become meaningless, but the one fortunate result was the accession to the forces of Dr. M.D. Eder, the distinguished psychiatrist. Sieff said his wife had the attitude of, let the men get on with it and we'll do the real work. In 1918, Rebecca and Vera Weitzman, can we see Vera, please, were among the 3 women members elected in their own right to the Council of the English Zionist Federation. Until their surrender on the 1st of November 1918, the Ottoman Empire had ruled Palestine with avarice, oppression, and corruption, and Jews, as second-class citizens, had few rights. Jews were forcibly drafted into the Ottoman army, which deported the entire civilian population of Jaffa and Tel Aviv, including over 40,000 Jews, many to Egypt, some dying on their way, and not all were able to return after the British conquest. Many Jews in Palestine died of hunger, famine, starvation, and maltreatment. My mother's paternal grandparents both died of starvation in Jerusalem, and the food parcels the family sent them were confiscated. And then, on the 9th of December 1917, the British forces occupied Jerusalem. You can see in the picture Allenby entering Jerusalem. Here is a little-known story. I was asked if the Jewish community would lay a wreath at the castle to honor the colored soldiers who died in the Battle of Square Hill, which we did. In the decisive Battle of Square Hill, the Turkish soldiers who were blockading the Jerusalem-Nablus road were defeated, and the way to Jerusalem was opened to the British troops. Within a few days, the Turkish armies in Palestine had practically ceased to exist. And whose victory was it? A Cape Corps squadron of colored soldiers. Can we see the next picture, please? The regulations at the time stated that coloreds couldn't fight against whites, that is Germans, but they could fight against Turkish soldiers deemed non-whites. What a bizarre form racism can take. Yet, here is an example of inverse racism. We were never asked again to take part in such a ceremony, as the army, in its wisdom, decided that instead of holding a ceremony to honor colored politicians, colored soldiers, they should honor black soldiers. So now we have SS Mendy Day ceremonies, which are held instead to commemorate the black soldiers who drowned when their troop ship sunk after a collision. One of the people sitting there up here in the castle with the mayor is the Jewish representative. He's not in that photograph. The cousins, David Eder and Joseph Cowan, were also friends of Weitzman, and they were all sent by the British government in April 1918 as part of a Zionist commission under Chaim Weitzman and Israel Sieff, as secretary, to survey the situation in Palestine and prepare recommendations for applying the Balfour Declaration. Israel remembered how angry Rebecca was because she wasn't allowed to go. She saw no reason why she shouldn't accompany them, rightly insisting, Israel said, that she could do his job better than he could. Led by Rebecca, Vera and Edith felt the men didn't include them in the decision-making and vowed to start something of their own, so they formed a ladies' committee within the British Zionist Federation in 1918 to plan a program for women and children with funds they intended to raise. And on January the 12th, 1919, they held a founding conference in London to set up the Federation of Women Zionists in England and Ireland, with Rebecca as president, and started collecting clothing for orphans in Palestine. We used to do things like that. Sieff emphasized 2 issues which became central in the activities of the new women's organization: the establishment of an international Zionist women's organization and the founding of a school for home economics in Jerusalem. In September 1919, Weitzman and Israel Sieff returned to England, while Edith Eder remained in Palestine with her husband, living on an orange farm. But when Weitzman and Sieff returned to England, their wives went off to Palestine in order to collect the first-hand information on the situation of the Jews there. Joined by Edith, they formed a women's representative committee that traveled the length and breadth of Palestine during October and November 1919. Vera Weitzman said, Mrs. Ida, Mrs. Seif and I, as we toured the country, were very impressed by the hard work done by our pioneer working women. But we were no less perturbed and even appalled by the arduous physical conditions of their lives. Their homes, bare and simple, were neglected. Cooking was haphazard at best, and the results of their culinary efforts anything but satisfying. Dietary standards were neither known nor taken care of. To our mind, these enthusiastic, idealistic women were mortgaging their future motherhood and even risking their health for this equality principle. They worked 10 or 12 hours breaking rocks and stones for road making and repairing, carrying heavy loads, performing superhuman tasks. They and their menfolk snatched whatever food they could lay their hands on. Looking at the problem they saw around them, each woman viewed the needs through their own frame of reference. Vera and Rebecca thought the young women pioneers must be taught to use modern technologies through a vocational training institute. Rebecca, the feminist, wanted to see the women organized, active, and equal to men. Edith, the teacher, wanted to improve the education of the children. Vera, the doctor, a pediatrician, was shocked at the high rate of infant mortality and the poor rate of health among the women and children. A Zionist Congress was to be held in London, the first after World War I. The women of the Federation of Women Zionists wrote to the organizing committee of the Zionist Congress saying that an independent international Jewish women's organization should be established, and the suggestion was supported by Leo Herman, the organizing secretary. The women held a salon meeting first, early in July 1920, to prepare for this. Edith told them, we need to establish infant welfare centers in Jerusalem, Safat and Tiberias, to keep the babies who are born healthy. They are so intent on building the land, they neglect their own welfare and that of their children. We have to do something about this. A domestic training school for wives and mothers was also very necessary. The women came from diverse backgrounds and cultures, and many didn't know the basics of healthy eating and home economics. A few days later, on July the 11th, 1920, Rebecca, Vera, and Edith, through their Federation of Women Zionists, called a conference as part of the Zionist conference in London, where Vera's husband was elected president of the World Zionist Organization. Rebecca Seif, can we see Rebecca? Rebecca Seif was an excellent speaker with a brilliant mind and a forceful personality. At the conference, she spoke at length about women needing to work together in an organized fashion in areas of education, home economics, legislation, health, and social services, all areas that have been completely neglected under Ottoman rule. Edith Ida, like Rebecca, was also famous for her impassioned and inspiring speeches. She spoke at length on education and proposed forming an agricultural school. Then they discussed children and decided that alternative care needed to be provided for children so that the mothers could go out to work, and that mothers needed professional guidance in childcare and nutrition so that they could look after their children to the best of their ability. They also discussed the position of Jewish women in Jewish law and the desire for equality and the hope that a central rabbinical authority would emerge that could deal with these problems. A resolution was passed to form the Women's International Zionist Organization, WIZO, to promote the welfare of women and children in Mandate Palestine and to carry out specific work in the reconstruction of Palestine. Women from South Africa, Palestine, England, Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, and Russia were present. Edith was elected onto the WIZO executive as co-treasurer and became vice president of the Federation of Women Zionists. And Rebecca alternated with Vera as WIZO president for 40 years. Israel Seif said that Vera and his wife were basically lifelong friends who fought each other all the time. What happened? Oh, here's the committee. What happened afterwards? Within 8 years of its founding, WITSA attracted 34 worldwide federations consisting of 40,000 members, enabling the organization to establish a strong educational and social welfare infrastructure in Palestine. Being women, we didn't just talk, we acted. By 1926, WITSA's first agricultural school at Nachalal was a reality. A network of creches was started. The first WITSA South African sponsored project was the Mothercraft Training Center in Tel Aviv, established in 1957, which cared for premature babies and trained pediatric nurses. But unfortunately, when it came to establishing a rabbinical authority to change the position of Jewish women in Jewish law, we failed. But we're still working at it. What happened afterwards with the founders? The Eders moved to Palestine, where David served as a political officer and doctor for the Zionist Commission and helped in the absorption of the first groups of immigrants of the Third Aliyah, displaying great understanding for their pioneering spirit. Weizmann said what mattered was his real kindness, his tolerance and humanity, his eagerness to understand the other's point of view. And these qualities soon gained for him the deep respect and affection of even the most recalcitrant among them. To nobody but Ida would they open up. He seemed possessed of some sort of intimate personal magic, which charmed away their fears and suspicion. He took charge of the commission, and whenever difficulties arose, it was he who was called in to straighten matters out. He always gained his point by persuasion and never resorted to threats or bluster. He was a tower of strength to us in those days. He understood the British better than most of us, was always able to reason matters out, to explain difficulties, and to advise. From 1921 to 1927, he was elected onto the Zionist executive in Palestine as diplomatic representative, always, of course, supported by his wife, Edith. In 1932, the Weizmann visited South Africa on a Keren Hayesod tour, and Joseph visited Palestine. Vera was determined to establish a WITSA branch in South Africa. It wasn't easy because men dominated the Zionist organizations and they didn't want a women's branch, but we went ahead and established WITSA here. While they were in Durban, Weizmann took ill and got a telegram from Joseph, enthusing about what he'd seen in Palestine and saying that he was thinking of moving there. But soon after Joseph came home, he died. The day after Weizmann returned from South Africa, a memorial service was held for Joseph with eulogies from Weizmann and his cousin David Eder. 4 years later, Weizmann was to speak at David's funeral after he died from a heart attack. Tributes were received from his friends, who included Albert Einstein, H.G. Wells, Rebecca West, D.H. Lawrence, and Sigmund Freud, who described him as a pioneer figure in 3 of the great modern movements of his age: socialism, psychoanalysis, and Zionism. With the rise of Hitler, Vera established Youth Aliyah in England and devoted all of her efforts to it. This helped her with her grief when the plane of her son Michael, a pilot in the British Air Force, plunged into the sea in 1940, chasing a German submarine. Rebecca traveled extensively, speaking on behalf of WITSA and organizing its branches all over the world. She arrived in Cape Town in 1936 as the Keren Hayesod delegate. The Palestine Post on the 1st of April 1936 reported that over 600 women were present at a lunch in London held the day before in honor of Rebecca Seif prior to her departure for South Africa on behalf of the Palestine Foundation Fund. Lady Simon sent a message stating that she'd always been a Zionist and she wished Mrs. Seif success. It is sad today that it is no longer fashionable to state that one is a Zionist, and as in 1936, anti-Semitism is on the rise. In 1940, Berlin Nazi police officers placed Rebecca on the list of dangerous or important people to be arrested as soon as the Nazis occupied Britain. Fortunately, they didn't. Rebecca was especially active in the 1940s as a campaigner against British rule in Palestine. As for Edith, she wasn't well and died in 1944. I came across the Ediths once more when I met Florrie Cohen when I was working at the Jewish Seniors in Claremont, and she showed me an exercise book in which she had written her experiences on a winter day in 1940. Can we have the next picture, please? She was living in Ireland and wanted to go on Aliyah. So she joined a Hachshara farm, hoping the experience would gain her a precious visa to go to Palestine. And she joined the David Eder training farm near Maidstone in Kent. There were refugees from Germany on the farm as well. She writes with humor about struggling knee-deep through the snow one freezing day to feed the chicken and the sheep, which knocked her over in their eagerness to get the food. After supper, tiredness forgotten, they all joined in singing and dancing the hora. I published her story in a special issue of Jewish Affairs, celebrating the 70th anniversary of Israel. Florrie married there, but unfortunately her husband was killed in a tragic accident, leaving her with a baby. After the war, Rebecca visited DP camps in Germany, advising the Holocaust survivors and helping them emigrate to Palestine. During the War of Independence in 1948, Vera volunteered to help in the rehabilitation of the injured and raised funds for the establishment of the Tel HaShomer Hospital. She became First Lady when Chaim Weizmann became President of Israel. After her husband's death in 1952, she continued working for Youth Aliyah, the rehabilitation of those disabled in the war, and Magen David Adom, serving as its president. She died in 1966 and is buried next to Chaim in Rehovot. Rebecca lived mainly at her home in Tel Mont, Israel. Her home was attacked by terrorists in 1957, who murdered her gardener, but she refused to move out of her house. Like her lifelong friend Vera, she also died in 1966 and was buried in Tel Mont. Next slide, please. So here you have the story of Rebecca, Vera, and Edith, the founders of WITZO, and the many connections with South Africa. Through all these years, WITZO has been there to help the women and children, and all of you listening in, including those we are honoring today, are unsung heroines who have dedicated their time and effort to help to develop facilities for women and children living in a Jewish homeland that has, despite many wars and challenges, emerged as a modern miracle whose achievements are cause for pride. It is a pity that Rebecca, Vera, and Edith cannot see WITZO and Israel now, and I'd like to congratulate all the people who are going to receive the awards today. Thank you.
So wonderful. Thank you, Gwen. You're a true mine of information. We can always rely on you to deliver an entertaining and insightful account of our history. Thank you so much for your efforts. Adefe, can we put up the certificate, please? Thank you. So Gwen, in appreciation of your making time to talk this morning, as you always graciously do, we would like to present you with this certificate of thanks and appreciation for sharing your valuable time and for your most interesting and informative address on WITZO pioneers and some South African connections at our Rebecca Seif Award ceremony on the 19th of August. Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you.
Lady Rebecca Seif, as you just heard from Gwen, a suffragette and ardent Zionist, co-founded the Women's International Zionist Association in July of 1920. She remains an integral part of WITZO's leadership for 43 years and grew the organization to a position of unimaginable strength and influence. It is in her honor that the World WITZO International 40-Year Service Award is named. We would like to share a short video with you in her honor.
Rebecca Seif was born in 1890 in Leeds, England, and educated in Manchester. She was the eldest daughter of Michael Marks, founder of Marks and Spencer. Her husband, Israel Seif, and brother, Simon Marks, were close friends and associates of Chaim Weizmann, leader of the Zionist movement in Britain, who later became the first president of the State of Israel. In 1919, Chaim Weizmann's wife, Vera, and Rebecca Seif visited Eretz Israel. They were shocked by the harsh living conditions of the women pioneers and Jewish families and decided to take action. Aiming to strengthen the Zionist Yishuv and contribute to the building of a national home for the Jewish people, Rebecca Seif founded the Women's International Zionist Organization, WIZO, in London in 1920. Rebecca Seif was a feminist before her time who vigorously campaigned for equal rights for women. In 1948, after the establishment of the State of Israel, Rebecca Seif realized her dream and made Aliyah.
The Rebecca Seif Awards, as mentioned, are usually annual events on our WIZO Cape Town calendar, were established many years ago in recognition of long-standing active WIZO women who have achieved 40 years of uninterrupted service. We also introduced 50, 60, and 70-year plus awards in Cape Town in further recognition of these amazing women. This year, we celebrate the 2020 and 2021 recipients as follows. For 40 years of service: Joan Alpert. Joan's WIZO journey started as a young mother in Camps Bay, where she was welcomed by the ladies in the local community and asked if she wanted to join Bnot Zion. Describing herself as a worker, not a leader, Joan greatly values the wonderful people she has worked with through the years and the feeling of making a difference in many lives through the events, donations, and fundraisers that she has helped to organize. Mazal Tov, Joan. Angie Alperstein. Angie joined Aviv Alon and later became a member of EMEC, taking on the role of treasurer at both branches. She fondly remembers many fundraisers and interesting functions, many of which she was an integral part. Mazel Tov, Angie. Marcia Factor. Marcia has been a contributor to the Cape Town community through her involvement in Bnot Zion WIZO, Astra, and the Flower Group. In her more active days, Marcia was a great supporter of Bnot Zion Association WIZO and remains a member to this day. Mazal Tov, Marcia. Etty Flax. Etty was brought up in a Zionist family, her parents having been chalutzim in British and Mandate Palestine for many years before coming to South Africa and settling in East London. Etty joined the East London branch of WIZO and partook in many fundraisers over the years. After retiring, she relocated to Cape Town and joined the EMEC branch. She's still very much involved in Jewish Cape Town. Mazal Tov, Etty. Anita Greenstein. Anita has great memories of her time with WIZO. After moving to Bantry Bay in 1979, Anita joined the Gila branch, where she held the position of chair lady for 2 years, as well as campaign convener for a long while. Anita says that she's always supported raising funds for Israel and that Bnot Zion Association WIZO is always in her heart. Mazel tov, Anita. Sheila Huth. Sheila remembers being chair of the newly formed Etzion branch in Sea Point in the early days of her marriage. After moving to Constantia, she joined EMEC, where she also became chair lady, where she oversaw many successful fundraisers. She continues to support WITSO on an ongoing basis. Mazel tov, Sheila. Millicent Levine. Millicent joined WITSO in Port Elizabeth as a way of meeting women of her age and raising funds for Israel in 1975, whereafter she relocated to Welkom and became an active member of WITSO there. Her final move back to Cape Town found her joining Etzion. Over the years, Millicent has made lifelong friends and all the while contributing to umpteen WITSO projects. Mazel tov, Millicent. Roz Lewinson. Roz was destined to follow in her mother, Sarah Coleman's footsteps. Sarah was a chairman of Bnot Zion, and this inspired a lifelong love of Israel in Roz. In 1980, she joined the Aviv Alon branch and remained a member for 15 years, and also held the position of chairman at the branch. In 1995, Roz joined the Gila branch, becoming co-chairman, and this is a position that she has held ever since. Mazel tov, Roz. Phyllis Miller. During her childhood, Phyllis's introduction to Bnot Zion started very early as she helped to count the blue box money for her mom, Sarah Lewin, who made sure they were always over the 10 Rand targets. Phyllis later joined the Aviv branch in Cape Town and later the Aviv Hadar branch. She has also been active in the Gesher branch and is now an active member of the Century City branch. Mazel tov, Phyllis. Sylvia Bubbles Roberts. Amazingly, Bubbles recently turned 93 and is still an active member of the Bnot Zion Association, WITSO. Bubbles is well known for the hundreds, and I'm not exaggerating, beanies that she has knitted to keep children in underprivileged communities in Cape Town a little warmer during the cold winter months. She originally joined WITSO in Port Elizabeth in 1957 and eventually moved to Cape Town in 1978, joining Tomer and then the Orit branch. Bubbles continues to contribute to both Israel fundraising as well as local outreach work through WITSO. Mazel tov, Bubbles. Cheryl Salkinder. Cheryl's mother-in-law, Leah Salkinder, introduced her to BZA WITSO. Leah belonged to the Tygerberg branch, Henrietta Zold, and then EMEC. Having been an active member and involved for many fundraising initiatives over the years, Cheryl feels privileged to have met many wonderful ladies over the years through Bnot, who remain friends to this day. Mazel tov, Cheryl. Sally Singer. Sally was initially a member of the WITSO equivalent in Harare, Zimbabwe, Chana Senesh. On her return to Cape Town in 1977, she joined the Hidding branch and was simultaneously an integral part of the Association of Hebrew Pre-Primary Schools as principal and later as director of education for 21 years. She's also held the position of chairman of the UJW, Kensington Creche, and she later moved to Oasis and has been a founding member of the Century City branch ever since. Mazel tov, Sally. Brenda Spilkin. Brenda has always been a keen Zionist, becoming an active member of WITSO originally in Umtata in 1958, guided by her late mother-in-law, who was then the chair lady. When the family moved to East London, Brenda was integral in various fundraisers, and on moving to Cape Town, her daughter Kim made sure that she joined the Gila branch, where she's still a member today. Mazel tov, Brenda. Lorraine Zev. Lorraine's introduction to WITSO began while she was still at school, assisting her mother with blue box collections. She was also encouraged to do little tasks whenever her mother's branch in Muizenberg, Chana Senesh, held card afternoons, cake sales, and rummage sales. Later on, Lorraine joined EMEC. She was an active member there for many years, enjoying friendships made and lovely memories, which she treasures. Mazel tov, Lorraine. Now a very special award, our Tygerberg branch. Our Tygerberg branch is also due a Rebecca Seif Award this year. Having lost many members in the past few years, the branch continues as proud Witso women under the ever dedicated guidance of Lucy Wolf. Thank you, Lucy, for holding down the fort, and a special thank you to our executive member, Kim Deitch, who has been the branch liaison for many years. Kim will pass this award onto the Tygerberg branch on our behalf. Mazel tov to all our 40-year recipients. 50-year award recipients. Cecile Barnett. Cecile had wonderful role models in her mother and two older sisters who were all chairladies of their respective Witso groups for many years. She joined the Camps Bay group and was vice chair for many years until joining Orit branch. Cecile says she will never leave Benoit, as it is part of her and part of her heritage. Mazel tov, Cecile. Lee Boyskin. Lee initially became a member of the Fresnay branch, moving on to Aviv and gradually assuming several portfolios, mostly that of Hasbara convener, to proudly holding the title of chairman of Bnot Zion Association. Zionism and a passion for volunteering are just some of the many values that she learned from her late mother, who was a member of the Friederhoek branch. Lee is currently a member of our Witso Cape Town executive, but most importantly, Lee feels exceptionally privileged to belong to an organization now in its 120th year. Mazel tov, Lee. Lorraine Gerwitz. Lorraine comes from a very active Zionist family, and Israel was always a focal point in her family's life. She lived in Israel for a number of years before returning to Cape Town and joining Bnot Zion. This led to many friendships, and she held the positions of chairman and co-chairman of the Orit branch. She will always be grateful to Bnot Zion Association Witso for allowing her to be involved and contribute in a small way towards assisting the various beneficiaries in Israel. Mazel tov, Lorraine. Felicity Isero. Felicity first became involved with Bnot Zion around 51 years ago when she joined the Fresnay branch with Florence Goldberg, who was her mentor and inspiration to work for Israel. Felicity collected blue boxes from door to door, as well as actively campaigning for Bnot Zion Association Witso and spearheading several successful projects and events. From 2014 to 2016, Felicity, together with Suzanne Luck, became the co-chairman of BZA Witso Cape Town. Felicity remains on our executive committee, as well as being our fundraiser convener until today. Mazel tov, Felicity. Juliet Katzenberg. Juliet served as co-chairman of the Orit branch and was instrumental in starting the gift service, La Matanot, which later grew to become Gift Time as we know it today. Julie and her committee were a group of friends who raised substantial funds for Witso. She also held the position of Hasbara convener for many years, managing to get amazing speakers for their meetings and events. Julie, we wish you a very hearty Mazel tov, not only on the receipt of your award, but on your 80th birthday tomorrow. Mazel tov, Julie. Michelle Miller. After moving to Strand, Michelle quickly became entrenched in small community Jewish life, holding posts as treasurer, secretary, and chairman at Witso, the UJW, and the Shul Ladies Committee, under the guidance of the late Etty Buch and Kaylee Nocky, who had their businesses directly opposite Michelle's own. Michelle formed lifelong friendships with these wonderful women, which formed a strong foundation for their many innovative fundraising activities over the years. Mazel tov, Michelle. Sarah Morris. Sarah feels fortunate to have formed many lifelong friendships as a result of her joining Witso's Orit branch on moving to Cape Town from Zimbabwe. To this day, Witso remains a thread that binds the core members of the branch, who remain supportive and committed to the success of Orit and Bnot Zion Witso Cape Town. Mazel tov, Sarah. Myra Osran. As a young Aviv and founding member of the Hadar branch in 1971, Myra was inspired by the caliber and commitment of the then leadership. Myra is proud to have served as chairman of Benot Zion, which she considers to be an exemplary Zionist organization from 1979 to 1981. While her subsequent leadership roles in other communal organizations, such as SAZ of Cape Council and the Holocaust Foundation, precluded her from day-to-day involvement, her esteem and admiration for Benot Zion has remained. She felt deeply honored a few years ago to be appointed honorary life chairman and to remain a strong supporter of BZA WITZO for 50 years. Mazal Tov, Myra. Rose Radowski. Growing up in Muizenberg across the road from Herzl Talmud Torah Hall, Rose was drawn into working for Benot Zion at the tender age of just 10 years old. She was assigned the task of going to every family, door to door in the road, and collecting the contents of their blue boxes. After moving to Rondebosch, Rose joined Aviv Rondebosch branch, ultimately becoming co-chairman with Sybil Castle. When Rose retired, she again sought out the involvement and friendship that being a BZA WITZO member brings. She has found it greatly fulfilling and a source of support in her life. Mazel Tov, Rose. Linda Saban. WITZO has been part of Linda's life since childhood, as her late mum was involved with WITZO in Namibia. When she arrived in Cape Town, she was encouraged to join WITZO. When she lived in Oranienburg, she chaired the Aviv Golan group for 5 years and was also the branch treasurer. Eventually, Aviv Golan was amalgamated with Orit branch, where Linda has been a member ever since. Until recently, she was the treasurer of the Orit branch. Linda remains a member of our executive committee in Cape Town, the ladies of which she describes as the most wonderful and committed leaders. Mazel Tov, Linda. Lena Sank. Since becoming a member of the Sea Point branch of Benot Zion in 1966, Lena has been involved with many different branches over the years. She's well known as a dedicated member of the Cape Town community, always lending support wherever she can. Lena feels it is a real privilege to be a member of Benot Zion today, as we now include local outreach projects in our program. She congratulates all her hardworking fellow recipients and is proud to be counted among them. Mazel Tov, Lena. Mazel Tov to all of our 50-year award recipients, 60-year awards. Janice Bloch. Janice grew up in a very Zionist family, with her mother being chairman of the Maitland branch and her father very involved in community affairs. Around the age of 24, she joined the Belleville Kales River branch up north, taking the portfolio of welcoming new members to the community. After moving to Kenilworth, she joined the Kadima branch and then Hadar, where she remained ever since, having held the position of co-chairman. She rejoices in Israel's achievements and prays for her safety. Mazal Tov, Janice. Paula Goldblatt. Soon after moving to Paro in 1954, Paula joined the local Benot branch, eventually taking the chairmanship. It was a lovely, close-knit community, and the members all became firm friends, masterminded many successful fundraising efforts. After moving to Sea Point, Paula then joined the ladies of Tabor. She also assisted at Hello Baby and later also worked at Gift Time in Gardens. Mazal Tov, Paula. Muriel Senzel. Muriel lived in Port Elizabeth for 25 years and was the chief caterer, organizing many Jewish Simcha functions. Her mother imbued her Zionist spirit, being chairman of the country communities. Muriel's father was the chairman of the Craddock Shul at the time. When she moved to Cape Town, she joined the Tabor branch and attended meetings when she could, and enjoyed being part of a group of women who worked hard to raise funds for Israel. She has always been drawn to Israel and spent many wonderful holidays there. Mazel Tov, Muriel. Mazel Tov to all of our 60-year award recipients. 70-year awards. Ruth Katzif. a very special lady. Ruth was married in 1930 and lived in Caledon for the first year, moving to Greenpoint the following year when she joined Aber North branch. She was immediately swept up into a hive of energy and activity. There was a strong sense of commitment, and the ladies worked in earnest to raise funds and collect clothing for men, women, and children in Israel. Ruth went from door to door, collecting blue box donations from neighbors, rummaging for their frequent sidewalk and garage sales, and baked and sold cakes at the popular cake sales, which were held outside Grand Bazaars in Sea Point, which is now ShopRite. There was a great sense of belonging to a very important and worthwhile organization. Ruth has made lifelong friendships and felt part of a dynamic support system. She was, and still is, very proud to be a member of B'nai Zion WITZO, and is so delighted that her daughters Shirley and Barbara are actively involved in as well. Mazal tov, Ruth. Mazal tov to all of our wonderful recipients. Thank you to those who came to the photograph opportunity last week, and to those who facilitated the handover of the certificates and photographs at their homes. I could unfortunately not be with you, as my family was unfortunately in isolation. This is just the times that we live in. But please know that I was definitely with you in heart. We must make special mention of our generous sponsor of today's event, Shirley Trope-Friedman of the George Elkin Family Trust, who also happens to be our wonderful WITZO South Africa chairman. We would also like to thank Yolandi Kretz-Marquise for donating her time and creativity to photograph our recipients. Then special thanks to Les Carson, who so graciously agreed to assist us with the award ceremony and the lead up and all of the administration that goes along with it in the background leading up to today's event. I would like to personally thank Tamar Lazarus for all of her inputs and for spearheading this event. Without Tamar, it would not happen, I guarantee you. And then last but not least, Ida Faye, will you put the spotlight on yourself so we can see who you are?
Tamara's done that.
She has. Thank you, Ida Faye Mervis, for your IT expertise and running the Zoom event this morning, because I can guarantee all of you that if it wasn't for Ida Faye, we would be stumbling through this in staccato. So thank you very much, Ida Faye, for your time and your dedication. We know we always rely on you and things run so smoothly. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for your continued support of our events and occasions. Your enthusiasm is so appreciated. We have several events in the coming weeks, all virtual, of course. We would be delighted to have you join us at a talk by Michelle Schwartz on using Yom Tov to build your future. That is on Tuesday, the 24th of August, 2021, obviously at 10 a.m. And then on Monday, the 30th at 6 p.m., WITZO presents Restoring Life to the Broken. Lisa M. is a Jewish woman living in Kurdistan among the Yazidi refugees. These both, I'm sure, will be very enlightening talks. So please do join us. If you would like to receive the Zoom links for either one of the talks, please be in touch with our offices. As you know, we rely on your continued donations to our amazing projects and causes. We would really love for you to consider making a contribution, becoming a lifetime member, or pledging to our biennial campaign. I will leave these details up on the screen, and should you wish to make a contribution, please do so. In closing, I wish you all to be safe and healthy, and that we should see each other in person, please God, at the 2022 Rebecca Seif Awards. Please be sure to stay on this event. We'll be singing the national anthems, and then I will be opening up the meeting should anybody want to say a few words, or if you would like to chat to somebody that you haven't seen in a while at the other end of the world, but you've seen their thumbnail on the screen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone. We're now going to unmute you all, so please feel free to raise your hand or say something.
Talk.
You can just unmute yourself and speak.
Okay, Sally.
Thanks. Okay, Sally.
Okay. Thank you very, very much for this amazing honor. We're so proud and positive at the country. You know you ever well. And just to take